Our discussions today focused at least as much on the implementation challenges going forward as on the negotiations going on this week, which we understand are going well. Now, the drafting committee, which is composed of representatives from the Collaborative Partnership on Forest Drafting co-host organizations, has been very busy this afternoon crafting a summary statement based on this morning's plenary and sub-plenary sessions. A more complete statement, which will include summaries from the high-level session and the learning events, will be available tomorrow. So, allow me to quickly read through an interim statement before asking you to respond. In the half day that it took for the deliberations to take place that I'm about to summarize, the world will have lost tropical forests of an area roughly the size of Copenhagen City. Such deforestation and degradation accounts for up to 1/5 of the current global total of all greenhouse gases emitted as a result of human activity, by many estimates, not to mention the untold loss of biodiversity. It is now widely accepted that forests must play a role, an early and central role, in the emerging global and national climate mitigation and adaptation strategies. In other words, as the forests go, so goes the fate of the hundreds of millions of people, including some 60 million indigenous peoples, who depend on forests for their livelihoods. It doesn't have to be this way. But the road ahead is not completely clear. How should forests be included in the climate agreement? What are the greatest obstacles to the successful implementation of REDD+? For example, should some kinds of logging activities be eligible for REDD payments? And what are the main barriers to mobilizing forests for climate adaptation? Today, close to 1,500 of the world's forestry experts, climate change negotiators, representatives of environmental and social non-governmental organizations, indigenous leaders, policymakers, and corporate representatives gathered at the Third Forest Day Congress, probably the most important to date, to inform the debate and seek consensus on these and other pressing questions. The results of these deliberations I will now attempt to summarize. In our morning session, our plenary speakers stressed the following points: that if deforestation continues at its current level, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to reach the target of containing the increase in global mean temperature to within the 2 degrees Celsius. Forests can make a very significant contribution to a global mitigation portfolio. Even if forests contribute less than 20% of emissions, they have the potential to contribute more than 20% of the solution. Forest loss can lead to profoundly negative costs in terms of foregone goods and services. Reversing or reducing deforestation provides synergies with adaptation and sustainable development. 2 overarching commitments are needed to get REDD+ off the ground. First, developed nations must commit to compensate developing nations economically for reducing emissions from deforestation and degradation and for enhancing the storage of carbon in their forests, their conservation and sustainable management. Second, developing nations must commit to produce these reductions in environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable ways. This must be done in a transparent and verifiable manner, and the rights of the people living off the forests must be respected. There's a need for social and environmental safeguards. Forests play an important role in the fight against poverty and provide a safety net for poor people. Sustainable development means we are not only focusing on climate change actions for future generations, because life and opportunity for present generations are also of the essence. There's an important role for local communities to serve as forest stewards. REDD+ must help create and build on local institutions for forest management. REDD+ provides the opportunities for even further involvement of local communities in measuring and monitoring forest carbon and channeling REDD+ finance. And here's the one that's my personal favorite. The success of REDD+ depends on learning quickly as we move forward. Research institutions and civil society organizations will have an essential role to play in documenting and disseminating lessons learned. Frameworks for addressing climate change need to allow for adaptive policy processes that link local to national levels and engender the trust necessary to enable meaningful actions on the ground. The forestry sector has moved beyond a limited focus on timber production, but the sector has been handicapped by inadequate funding and weak political support. REDD+ can help reverse these trends, but as we move forward, we can't fall into the trap of looking at forests through only one lens, that of carbon. Now for the main messages from the sub-plenary sessions. 2/3 of participants polled felt that there is a great potential for synergies between forest-based adaptation and mitigation in terms of improving ecosystem resilience, local livelihoods, and governance. The time has come to identify concrete ways of capturing those synergies. Participants highlighted a wide range of forest-based options for delivering multiple benefits. REDD+ and adaptation actions need to be tailor-made to each country's circumstances. The majority of participants polled supported the potential eligibility of sustainable management of forests for REDD+ funding. Forest restoration provides an immense opportunity to address the widespread degradation of forest lands and significantly enhance carbon stocks. It also provides important opportunities for adaptation. Political and financial commitments are needed to seize these opportunities. REDD+ will require a transformational change in the way forests are governed to address the drivers of deforestation and forest degradation, especially those outside the forest sector. But participants saw many risks related to REDD+ implementation, and those risks can be reduced significantly through sufficient participation of indigenous peoples and local communities and equitable benefit sharing arrangements. The majority of participants polled felt that REDD+ implementation should start at both national and subnational levels and converge in the foreseeable future. Renewed efforts to reduce and reverse deforestation and degradation might work this time if the mechanism provides sufficient financial incentives to maintain and restore forests, if it is performance-based, if it is subject to independent verification and public scrutiny, and if there is greater inclusion of indigenous peoples and local communities in the process of developing the implementation rules at the national level. As climate risks continue to escalate, participants expressed the view that adaptation should immediately receive significantly increased attention from policymakers. Participants went so far as to propose a Marshall Plan for adaptation. Billions of people depend on the services provided by forests for their livelihoods, and therefore adaptation should be centered on the needs of these people. According to 2/3 of the participants polled, forests should be part of an ecosystem-based approach to adaptation, which promises to be more cost-effective than engineering-based approaches. Participants polled also identified the following as major barriers to forest-based adaptation options: a lack of appreciation of the importance of forest to adaptation, a lack of funding, and inadequate coordination across sectors and institutions, but not a lack of proven solutions. Improved forest governance is a prerequisite to reversing degradation. This includes ensuring that the exploitation of forests is legal and sustainable, including through certification, a recognition of the rights of indigenous peoples and tenure reform, more democratic processes and participation of stakeholders in decision-making, mechanisms to achieve intersectoral coordination and address underlying drivers, and monitoring to achieve transparency and improve response measures. So, Ivo, I leave it now to you to respond.